Right about now, you are listening to the Legacy and Leadership Podcast, a show where we discuss living as a leader worth following, leading others to do the same, and in doing so, leaving a legacy for future generations. My name is Jimmie Gonzalez Jr., a learning and development professional and leadership coach, sitting down with my co-host Anthony Devon Watts Jr., an expert contact center leader that has effectively led and developed dynamic teams with high motivation. Together, we have over 30 years experience in the corporate game. Join us as we discuss our growth as leaders, share the lessons we've learned, and interview others to see how their leadership style was shaped as they were mentored by adversity. Welcome back, Legacy Leaders, to the Legacy and Leadership Podcast, presented to you by the coaches at Legacy Leadership Learning Group. This is a show where we teach you really what it takes to live as a leader worth following, how to lead others to do the same, and in doing so, leaving a legacy for generations to come. I am Jimmie Gonzalez Jr., along with my co-host, Anthony Devon Watts Jr.
How's it going, leaders? It is officially day 14 of no haircut for Devon. So, don't worry, we're getting close, though. We're getting close. I'm trying to time it right before we end up taking a trip. I got a business trip and then a personal trip. So, if you're watching us on the YouTube, the vidcast, that would explain the series of hats you maybe have noticed over the past couple episodes. I'm trying to do the good people some justice. We want you to focus on the lesson and the mission and not what's going on with this hairline. Even though the facial hair is looking pretty scruffy too.
We thank you for thinking about us and our viewers. If you're watching us, do it for the people. Got to. If you're watching us on YouTube, we love for you to like this video, subscribe to our channel, and then share, this video and this content with another leader that you know would gain benefit from this topic, which is mind mapping. And we're going to get into details specifically about what this episode is going to be about and what we're going to be breaking down for you. If you're new or one of our loyal listeners, please feel free to rate and review the podcast as well. We definitely appreciate that. And again, we truly, truly love hearing from our legacy leaders out there and our folks that ride with us, that listen, that watch. So leave a review, leave comments, because we do read them, we do engage, and we do go back and forth with our community, which is growing. We actually now have the community section on the YouTube channel as we've surpassed the 1,000 subscriber milestone. Yes, I'm very happy about that. So look for different types of engagement. Again, if you're one of our loyal legacy leaders that watch us and follow us on YouTube.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to add some cheering in post after after this. I add in the little audio effects.
Some
Y'all
claps.
cheering, hey! It's a huge milestone, man. We're excited.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thankful.
Very thankful. Obviously we've been putting in work and investing in what we do. And it's good to see, kind of those milestones as we continue to grow. So we're going to get into, actually, let's jump into there first, man, because we talked about YouTube and some legacy leaders leaving comments and how we like to engage. So we let you know last week that this particular episode, we were going to be still focusing on mind mapping, but how mind mapping can help you with your life in general. So last week was all about the entrepreneur and business runners and how you can use that in that specific space of your life. But now we're going to be transitioning into your life. But actually, one of the comments that we got from our legacy leaders helped us a little bit more kind of define the direction and specifically what we're going to be talking about today.
Yeah, absolutely. So like you mentioned, I mean, we are highly engaged. If you've listened to the last episode, you heard us talk a little bit about all the different hats we wear as entrepreneurs and L3G coaches. So everything from, again, video editing, audio editing, creative directors, running the business, and the marketing arm and engagement arm. And so as a part of our hat for the engagement arm, we were going through the comments on the last video, and one of our legacy leaders, who's actually a doctor, just provided some feedback around our last episode about mind mapping, and it really helped to inspire us on the direction that we wanted to take this next episode as we talk about mind mapping your life. And so I just wanted to share his comment with the community and then talk about how that inspired us specifically. All right. But what he shared was that, hey, I use mind maps all the time, and there is some fantastic insight here. So I appreciate that. Appreciate you recognizing it. But organizing thoughts, doing a simple mind dump can help to hone in on a particular focus and creating an outline on some of the best features of mind maps that you mentioned. In medicine, anytime we are learning about some specific organ system, it becomes increasingly important to connect back to the big picture. Right? Connect back to the big picture. As you progress, the emphasis on these connections become incredibly important. Why? Well, clinically, this is how the body reacts. Understanding big picture concepts and why and how specific details impact the big picture is the basic gist of understanding systems in general. And as you know, the body is just one colossal system comprised of millions of smaller subsystems. I recently read this book called The Compound Effect, and I did have an epiphany about how mind maps help you identify particular minutiae that compound to lead to some good event or some lousy event. I never really thought about this connection regarding how things compound and at the scale at which they impact systems and the layers of domains that this influences. So as I was reading, Sohail's comment, right, I couldn't help but be a bit inspired, right, because we talked about mind mapping your life. And when you really think about what we're passionate about and something that we've always talked about sharpening your saw, about how you have to be operating at peak you in a multitude of areas in order to really deliver as a leader, as an entrepreneur, solopreneur, right, as a professional, right? Like you have to be good on the health front, you have to be good on the mental front, you have to be good in your relationships, you have to be good in your finances, right? And that is a part of all of those different facets make up the big system that is you, right? The big system that is you, right? So getting back to his comment about tying back to the big picture, understanding these smaller systems of how things are going from a health perspective, how things are going from a relationship perspective, how things are going in your personal life from a finances perspective can help to tie back to the bigger system of you. So I love the fact that he mentioned the book The Compound Effect, because that's essentially what we've been talking about on this legacy leader journey as we broke down these various concepts, is this compound effect that helps to make you a leader worth following, one that can lead others to do the same and leave a legacy for generations to come. So we're going to talk about your mind mapping your life from a health, relationships, and finances perspective with the intent of leveraging the compound effect to make you a better leader overall. So I'm really excited to get into those concepts today.
I am too. So what I heard by that is I am the big picture.
Yes, you are the big
Yes,
picture.
I am the big picture. And we're going to break down, as Devon just mentioned, three key areas, not just in my life, but in your life as well, that we can really focus on using mind mapping. And you may not have necessarily considered using mind mapping for these type of issues or challenges or just areas of your life. But again, a very, very good tool, as Devon just explained, for a multitude of areas in your life. So we're going to start off with relationships. Yes, relationships. They got to be nurtured, right? Relationships have to be nurtured. I think of a garden, and when you're planting seeds and you're growing flowers. Valentine's Day passed about a month ago, so ago. But I bought some flowers for my daughters. The flowers started to die, so I didn't grow any new ones, but I went and bought some new flowers. But I'm just thinking about the watering process. I'm thinking about having to nurture flowers and nurture your garden so that it can grow. And also making sure that the weeds that start to come about, we hadn't cut our grass for about 3 months. We're here in Orlando during the wintertime. The grass just wasn't growing, but it was time to do so. But there were some weeds. There were weeds growing, and you have to pull those weeds, because if you don't nurture, if you don't do that, you can get a variety of nasty things growing in your garden, growing in your yard, and it could even choke out, some of the other healthy plants that you have. And you don't want that, right? You could also have, some sharp thorns growing in some of the weeds and other plants and things like that. Things that are just obviously not good for the environment, right? So we're talking about the relationship. So when you build this relationship mind map and think about how can I nurture the relationships that are most important to me, And one of the first things we can do is really think about what are those relationships. So in this particular mind map example, relationships are going to be in the center. That is going to be the middle for us. You can obviously, as we've been talking about, right, write out the word relationships. You can get a picture. Maybe you have a picture of you and your spouse, or just other relationships, or even an icon of, a couple or people together, a group of folks. But that's going to be the middle. And then we start to build out the branches from there, and you can put names of the important people in your life. And then those sub branches are going to be these key words that you come up with from asking yourself some of these following questions. So for me, obviously, I'm thinking about my wife. I'm thinking about my children. I'm thinking about my siblings, my parents, my friends, and my brothers in Christ, the people that are closest to me. How can I show this person that I value them and the time that we spend together? That's just one question, right? So if I'm thinking about the branch with my wife, thinking about the branch with my children, how can I show this person or my children that I value them and I value the time that we spend together? Another branch, how can I increase the time that I spend with this person and make it count? What can I learn from this person? What are their core values? How does that match mine? If I'm talking about friendships that I have, for family members, what are things that we can do to make beautiful memories? So again, I'm starting off with relationships as a main center. I'm branching out these different relationships that I have with the most important people in my life. And then I start to ask myself these important questions to then start creating the sub branches within my mind map.
Yeah. So that's helpful in terms of the framework. And as you're working through it, you want to start leveraging, things that you may have already gotten some exposure to, and if not, then I strongly recommend you consider some of these things. But starting with the 5 love languages, right? That's something that I just thought was really profound. Something that I've consumed. I actually have a book. I think I got as a recommendation from you, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, we went through the class several years ago and went through the book. Yeah, very good. Highly recommend.
Right, but as you learn more about your partner, and again, I love the fact that you're not just talking about your relationship with your spouse, right? But you need to think about the totality of your relationships, with your spouse, your family members, right? Your parents, your siblings, your children, your friends, right? Your business partners, even your relationship with your faith, right? Your relationship with your faith, and really breaking down in these areas, right? So, am I meeting them on their terms? Am I making sure that I'm feeding, right? I'm feeding their love language in terms of how I demonstrate value. It's about being intentional. A lot of things that we talk about, with our legacy leaders is all about intention, right? Like intention. As a legacy leader, being intentional about how we spend our time, being intentional about how we communicate, being intentional about goal setting, being intentional about how we approach mind mapping in our relationships, right? And so, if I know, for example, that for the missus, she prefers acts of kindness, acts of service, right? Well, in my value box, now I need to make sure that I'm outlining acts of service that demonstrate to her that I value her relationship, I value our time together. How can I make sure that that's demonstrated? If if I know that, for example, time is important to her, and making sure that I'm spending ample time, what tangible steps am I going to take, or that I can take, to be intentional about my time, intentional about how I spend my time? Is it pre-planning and saying, hey, we're going to have, at least two dates a month without the kids. We're going to drop them off somewhere, right? Is it, being intentional about saying, hey, each month we're going to start a new show series that we're going to go through together, or a new book that we're going to read together. We're going to be intentional about, on the weekends, getting out and doing a physical activity with the family. Again, going through each one of those sub branches, those subsystems that feed into the larger system, the larger subsystem of your relationships, because you have to have your bases covered there. And again, in order to be operating at peak you. I know you talked about, creating memories, And this one, the one that you mentioned about how can I serve this person, really started to make me think about my relationship with my faith, right? And being intentional about identifying ways that I can serve in the community and be a vessel for Christ and my beliefs, and ensuring that I have that covered down on that front. And
Hmm.
again, from a time perspective, I naturally thought about, how can I be intentional about my time, and showing how I value our relationship as friends, as business partners, right? How can I be intentional about ensuring that I'm giving time to that to nurture that relationship? Because obviously, nurturing all of these relationships are critical if you want to be able to get the most out of them and give the most to them, right? Because it's not just about what you can get from the relationship; it's also about what you can give, right? And so, in order to ensure that you can get the most out of them, but also give the most to them, you have to be intentional about addressing each one of these areas.
I love how you broke that down, and that's just a great way to look at it, right? So you can go to their website, the five love languages, and you can take the assessments. I think you can take it for free as well through there. But going through the course, reading the book, obviously you get much more in depth look at it. But I love how we use that concept to make the mind map itself, right? So because it is all about nurturing it and what can I do to love this person, to make them feel special. I hear people talk, that's my love language. This is my love language. I guess people can have, their love language could be whatever they want it to be, but specifically with this book, we're talking about acts of service, words of affirmation, quality time, physical touch, and what's the other one? There's one more.
Time, touch, acts of service, words of affirmation.
So I know
It's clearly low on the list for us.
exactly.
Because I was going to say, words of affirmation is number one for me, actually. Um, Let me see here real quick.
I guess that's why we're boys. We're so the similarity. So yeah, my number one is words of affirmation. My second one is actually physical touch. So my wife is
Receiving
physical.
gifts. That's what it is.
Yeah, exactly. I guess I don't like giving
Yeah,
gifts.
same here, bro. I suck at like even surprises and stuff like that. Like trying to surprise people. Like like what you want. Tell me what you
Yeah.
want. All right, I'm gonna get it. I'm gonna make sure I get it. But yeah,
But what I like about that, because we talk about one of the key things about using mind maps is that it, as you allow yourself to go through that creative process, that you can uncover things and think about things that maybe weren't necessarily so obvious for you as you continue to drill down. So if you know that your spouse's love language or one of their love language is quality time, and there's a difference, right? Because and you gave some examples. Their quality time can be, no, I want to sit down and have a conversation. I want to talk, or let's go to a coffee shop. Or you know what? The quality time can also be for them. I'm okay just sitting down, not talking, but watching a movie or going through our shows and those type of things. So if I know quality time is that love language, then I start to break that down even more. And again, what are some ways based on what they prefer, not what I prefer, but what they prefer? How can I make those memories and spend quality time? If it's gifts, okay, let me get creative. What type of gifts can I provide? If it's words of affirmation, all right, how many different ways can I describe to this individual, what I truly appreciate about them, and why I care about them, and the things that I admire about that individual. I just thought that was a great example of how to use mind maps to really dive deeper into the relationships, using the five love languages, and really just helping to meet people where they're at. And like you said, the other important piece is that we're serving them, right? Because when you're nurturing that relationship, and I know it's kind of a slip. You said spend time, right? But it's not. We're investing, right? We're investing time. We're investing our resources. We're investing our thoughts into truly loving this person, and to the beginning, showing them how much we value them and value that relationship that we have in our life.
yeah, absolutely. Actually, I love too because you're right. Like being able to leverage the mind map to approach each one of those is actually a really good way to keep yourself honest. Because again, as you guys witness, because receiving gifts is low on our love language because it's not something that feeds me. I know that people enjoy doing it, but it doesn't tell me that like I'm valued, right? I just don't get as much out of it as others may. But you may have a spouse, your significant other, your siblings, your parent, whoever it is. They may value gifts, receiving gifts, and so without the mind map, that wouldn't come front of mind for me as the first thing that I need to think about in terms of how do I again meet this person where they're at and really truly demonstrate that I value the relationship. And so being able to go through that. And just keep yourself honest. And you may have somebody who, again, does value receiving gifts, and then now you can leverage the mind map to unlock your creativity. Think about different ways that you can do that. Like I mentioned, again, my love language is words of affirmation. Words of affirmation is not instinctually, Gabriella's love language, right? But she's found a way to meet me where I'm at, right? She's found a way to meet me where I'm at and vice versa. So she's found what works for her. So again,
Yeah.
like, stuff like leaving notes on the mirror in the morning. And so when she leaves, like, and I'm getting up to start my day, then I see it, right? And then that's how I receive my words of affirmation. So again, if you're leveraging the mind map properly, you can cover down all your bases, meet people where they're at. So again, that you can invest the time, the effort, the energy needed, so that you can give the most to the relationship, and make sure that you're operating at 100% in that space.
Yeah, absolutely. So, again, these are just examples. I think it's a really great one. Again, using, the five love languages and kind of incorporating that into this mind map that you're going to create for your relationships. But you may have other ideas that you want to explore. But that's the beauty of using mind maps, is that it gives you the opportunity to be creative, to explore, and just to let your mind really go and again, uncover things that maybe were not even necessarily the first things that you thought about. So continue to dig deep and look for other ways, you know what I mean, to make those relationships work and bring joy to that person, bring joy to these different relationships that I know, mean most to us, and I'm sure mean the most to you and our legacy leaders out there. And look for those connections as you continue to build out your mind map to make stronger bonds. I think if nothing else, so much has gone on over the last year or so, but just the importance of those strong relationships and what they mean to us. Definitely in some of the great moments in our lives, but even in some of the most challenging, having those strong bonds to share that experience and have people that are on your side to help you through that. So, very good, very good. I like that. I like that. This was not the Five Love Languages podcast, but hey, we're very diverse.
Diverse.
Yeah, we're very diverse in our knowledge and topics and relationships. But hey, hopefully we get some kudos for breaking that down because it means a lot to us. Yes. And funny enough, Stacy is the same way. I think kind of some challenges, but she makes it work when it comes to, in her, like you said, special way, giving words of affirmation. That's how you know that people really care, especially when it's not a strong suit, but they make it work and they do the best that they possibly can. So, number one was relationships. Bam, there you go, breaking it down for you. The second thing we're going to focus on when it comes to using mind maps to really improve your life is your health, right? So we talked about three: relationships, most important, and I appreciate you also talking about your faith and even your relationship with God, and even mind mapping that out and what I can do to strengthen that relationship. Your health, because if you're not healthy mentally, physically, spiritually, you're really not going to have everything that you need to take care of those most important relationships in your life. So we started off with relationships. Now we're going to get into health. And then the last thing we're going to talk about after this is going to be goals, specifically for your finances. Because if you ain't healthy, it doesn't really matter how much money you have. You want to make sure that you're healthy enough to invest it, make the right type of decisions, and enjoy the growth of the investments and the finances that you have. So just like before, we're talking about health and how this impacts every area of your life. A health mind map contains these specific components that we're going to be breaking down for you. Again, just like we did with relationships, health is going to be in the middle of your mind map. Maybe you want to have a picture of somebody working out. You can have a picture of somebody doing some type of exercise, maybe a picture of a heart that typically is kind of an icon for good health. Whatever, be creative with it. Whatever you want to signify health for you, make sure that that's in the middle. And then there's a number of branches that you can add when it comes to this mind map for health. Your immune system, Something that's big for me is sleep, exercise, meditation. Maybe it's addictions or vices, stress relief, the type of exercises that you do. So these are all branches that we can start with to really continue to build out our health mind map.
Yeah, what I like about, again, just mind maps in general is it invites you to dig deeper. It invites you to dive deeper, right? Like to drill down deeper. So, like you mentioned, immune system, right? An immune system could be where you really start to dive into your nutrition because we understand the importance of nutrition and how that plays a role, obviously in your immune system. And then even from there, you have more sub branches, right? So what all falls under nutrition? Well, it could be dietary supplements. It could be your individual meals, like breakfast, lunch, dinner, snacks, right? And then even from there, okay, well, what is the type of balanced nutrition I need to have in order to have the physical fitness and immune system and lifestyle that I need to have so that I'm operating at 100%, right? And then that's when we get into discussions around like your macros, understanding your macros, and making sure that you're having the right carb intake. And then so what are the appropriate type of carbs? So the protein, what are the appropriate type of protein, right? The fats, what are the appropriate types of fat, right? What are the different things that you can create? And again, it just really starts to spur that creativity and that thought process. And I want to emphasize that because having been a person who for the majority of my life, like again since I was a jit, right, having to play sports and eat and nutrition and think about those things, right, I know how sometimes overwhelming it can be to say, okay, well, I need to eat right. Like, well, what do I buy? Like, where do I start? What do I get? Right? And sometimes it's easier to have a lack of discipline when it comes to a nutritional perspective because you don't really have the bandwidth, or you don't want to feel overwhelmed by thinking about all the different things that you have to do, and then prepping the meals and then cooking and all that stuff, right? So you start to hit easy buttons. Well, McDonald's is easy, right? Chipotle is easy, and well, what can I get from these places that kind of meet some of my nutritional needs? And I'm here to tell you that while a component of that may be met, right, you're not necessarily. It doesn't mean that you're living a healthy lifestyle, right? Like, I'll be one of the first people to tell you because I used to hit this as a cheat code, but like, yeah, you can go to McDonald's and get a double quarter pounder with cheese, and that's about 48 grams of protein if you're focused solely on your protein, right, intake. But what does that also mean for your fat intake? What does that mean for your sodium intake? And how does that align with again, your nutritional goals and your immune system goals, right? You want to think about this thing holistically. How does this feed the bigger system of you? You can't just hit the protein goal, right, and then blow your sodium goal out of the water, and now you hit your protein intake, but you also got high cholesterol. Like, that defeats the purpose, right? And so these mind maps allow you to, it spurs creativity and it allows you to really start to dive deeper. Right, so we talked a little bit about your immune system, proper sleep. There's a lot that goes into proper sleep, right? I know that you mentioned that's really important to you. It's really important to Gabriella. For me, I've found what works for me. Again, just the way my body's wired. No matter what time I go to sleep, like, it does not matter, without fail. Like, literally at like the 4 or 5 hour mark, I get up. Like, my body wakes up and is like, all right, bro, you up, right? Like, you got all the sleep that you need. But that works for me. But there's a lot of things that feed into that, right? Like, when we think about what it takes in order to have the proper sleep, right? That means what type of environment, down to simple stuff. What type of pillow, what type of mattress, do you need some type of aromatherapy? Do you need a humidifier? Like, just all of these different things that feed into creating the environment so that you can have the best sleep possible, so that you can operate at the peak version of you, right? So that you can give 110% in all of these other areas that you're called to give to, as a leader, as a professional, as an entrepreneur, as a solopreneur, like all of those things, right? And so you can't just give 110% and mind map the hell out of your business plan or your business strategy and not take that same
Not do it for
level
your
of
life.
importance
Yeah.
and do it in your life, because you're not going to be able to deliver in your business. You're just not, right? Again, it comes back to what we continue to preach about: sharpening your saw, about exercising balance, about taking care of you, Like all of those things have to be hitting at 110%. So I really love the fact that we're talking about health, because there's a lot of different ways you can leverage mind maps to address all those different areas in your health. Like you said, immune system, proper sleep, exercise. You guys already know how we feel about that. Meditation. We've talked about meditation and just being centered till we're blue in the face. Stress relief, addictions. And again, addictions is another one. Coming to grips with maybe the vices that you have, right? The vices that you have, and being intentional about drilling down to the root cause, and then identifying ways that you can avoid them, curb them, and recover if they've started to, again, take hold on your life. So, yeah, man, this is important.
No, I love. I mean, it seems so simplistic. There's a little bit of work that would need to go into this, but it's. I love how we're talking about health, right? And again, one of your sub branches could be sleep, because sleep is so important. If you're trying to lose weight, it affects your hormone levels, which affects your ability to lose weight. So how much sleep am I going to get, right? But what are the different things that I need to look at? The environment that I'm in and that I'm creating, the nutrition, not just what I'm eating during the day, but what am I eating prior to me going to bed? What does that look like? All of those things are important. I like how you even talked about, the food perspective, right? And the nutritional perspective. So you talked about the macros. Well, I have compound carbs. What does that look like? And maybe you don't know, but you can start to do that research, dig a little bit deeper, and start breaking that down. We talked about fats. There's healthy fats. Obviously, there's non-healthy fats. For healthy fats, I want to look at salmon. I want to look at avocados. I want to look at cashews and almonds. But really, again, just really getting down to the nitty gritty and breaking all of those things down. And if you need to, doing the research to help you in that process. It's just a cool way to invest time in helping you with your personal matters, just as you would, as we talked about last week, as an entrepreneur or a business owner. We keep talking about sharpening the saw. If you've never heard that concept or heard us talk about the 4 areas, the 4 things that you should be focusing on a daily or weekly basis: spiritually, mentally, emotionally, and physically, right? You can always go back to season 1. The episode is actually called Iron Mike, which is episode 6 in season 1. But that one, we dive really, really heavy into that concept of sharpening the saw and breaking those 4 areas down for you. And then you can listen to see what Iron Mike and Mike Tyson, how that all plays together in that as well. That was a good one. Definitely appreciate that one. Yeah. But again, just a really, really good way, that you've broken that down for our legacy leaders. So I appreciate that, man.
Of course. Well, the thing that I hope that people are picking up on, right, is we keep coming back to this theme about investing, right? Like investing in the relationship. So, again, I love the fact that you called this out, and I'm doubling down on it, right? Which is, it does seem simple, but it does require an investment up front, right? If you recall the comment that kind of spurred, or inspired us to break down these specific topics, right? We talked about the systems, right? And how, the body is a large colossal system, right? We're talking about, actually, it's a large colossal system comprised of subsystems. So we'll really challenge you to create the subsystems that you need to operate the larger system, which is you, at peak capacity, right? So what are those subsystems, right? These are things about breaking down and developing a system for maintaining and nurturing relationships, right? If you were just flying by the seat of your pants, if you're just hoping that when you're in close proximity to somebody that you'll be able to nurture the relationship, like absent of a system, I'm telling you guys, you're not going to be able to sustain it. It's not going to be successful, right? The fact that Jimmie and I have been able to maintain our relationship over 12 years, we're talking about a decade plus relationship, a friendship that we have been through quite a bit with one another and there to support one another. And there's been times where we've been in close proximity, like coming into the same office every single day. And there's been periods of times where we're operating in different spaces. We got distance between us, right, in terms of mileage and all that stuff. we couldn't maintain this type of relationship if we did not have a system in place, if we were not intentional about investing in the relationship, reaching out, checking in on one another, having conversations not related to the podcast, not just waiting to have conversations when we're right on mic and on camera, right? And so the same is true for our legacy leaders out there. We're challenging you to invest the time to create the systems from a relationships perspective, from a health perspective, and next from a finance perspective, so that once you have the system operating, right, then from there it's about maintenance. And anybody can tell you, once you get the system going, you kind of get the momentum going for you, the rest takes care of itself, right? The rest takes care of itself. And then you can tweak your system for how the circumstances may change, but the foundation of your system remains the same, right? Remains the same.
Uh, Excellent point. I mean, everything that that we teach to our legacy leaders, again, is how do you take care of yourself in a way, again, because you can't serve somebody from an empty plate. So focusing on yourself so that you can focus and serve others, as a business owner, as an entrepreneur, or just a business runner in the corporate environment that you may be working in. But in all of those different areas, uh, in order to make it easy for yourself, especially if you're a solopreneur, right, and you have so many hats that you have to wear, is having systems in place that once they start going, it takes care of things and it makes the process for you so much easier. So I love how you compare that, right, to what we're talking about from a life perspective. Once you have these systems and these processes in place, it makes things easier. It's not always going to be easy, but it will make it easier to maintain a healthy balance mentally, spiritually, physically, and emotionally as well. So when we talk about health, again, making sure that you're focusing on that emotional aspect as well, is definitely a huge component. But it is all about investing, right? Investing time, and nurturing the kind of the garden bed that we talked about at the very beginning. So when we talk about investments, you may typically think about finances, and that's going to be the next topic that we discuss.
Yeah, absolutely. So when it comes to finances, right, financial planning is just another large component of your life, right? And I know that you all have either expressed this or seen it expressed, or seen it in some type of meme. But unfortunately, school does not teach us the basics of managing money, creating it, and being able to save it, even though that's a large part of what we do as adults, right? As adults, I can tell you the Pythagorean theorem, but it took me, learning on my own in my early and mid 20s about the concept of compound interest by myself, to really start to understand some of the foundational things of managing money, right? But that doesn't mean that just because you're not taught it through school or through other traditional education means that you should ignore that part of your life. In fact, it's the opposite, right? Like, it should push you to have better stewardship over your money, better control over your money, better understanding of that facet, right? To build a system that works for you and not the other way around. And so there are a number of ways to make a financial or finance mind map. I would say for this one, we can probably use like a similar format that we did to health, right? Where you would put finances in that center bubble, right? That center bubble, right? And then from there are a couple of different main branches that you may want to consider, right? Savings and investment. We all know that we all have an aspiration. We all have the goal in mind of not having to work anymore in order to live, right? And wanting to be in a position where we can stop working, really enjoy life, really enjoy the latter years of our life, spending with family, and go and do the things that we desire to do, right? Well, you need to have considerable savings and investments to be able to make that, a reality. You may want to consider insurance and disability, right? And the things that are important from that perspective and how that plays a role in your life. You may have different needs than other individuals, right? Maybe you have somebody in your family, immediate family, that's of special needs, right? And so the challenges that presents and the things you need to account for from a financial perspective is a lot different than others, right? And so planning that out, emergency cash, right? I think some of these things may have hit us more recently than others as we've gone through 2020, and we found ourselves, a lot of us, in positions where we were furloughed. We had no reserves, right? Maybe you had no reserves. Maybe you had nothing saved up. Maybe you didn't know how you were going to be able to make ends meet for the next month, right? And maybe you were fortunate enough to be able to take advantage of some of those, government systems or assistance that was out there, whether it's unemployment and some of the stuff they did there, or the forbearance assistance that some of these places have, been able to provide, right? But think about it. Like, what position would you have been if those things didn't come to fruition? Do you want to find yourself as a entrepreneur? Can you afford to find yourself as a leader in your family, as an entrepreneur, solopreneur, at the mercy of elected officials and a large government infrastructure, right, to determine whether or not you're going to be able to take care of what you're responsible for? Do you want to be in that position, right? And I can tell you, having gone through that experience this last year, you all may have heard me talk about it before. If not, you're introduced to us for the first time, right? I've shared about the fact that last year was a huge transformational year for me, in the sense that I found myself again furloughed, after being with the organization for about 12, 13 years, right? And then trying to figure out what the next steps were for me. Fortunately, early in my 20s, and I really made a concerted effort to invest in my understanding of finances, and understanding that I need to have control over those things, so that when the unexpected happened, we were fortunate enough to have a reserves and have emergency savings and be able to have things in place to float us until I figured out what the next step was, right? And while there was definitely assistance out there, I can tell you just from my own experience, right? Because when I got furloughed, I got the note or the communications like, hey, you guys will be you'll be eligible. The government is providing unemployment, so you can just apply for that, right? And we're not going to fight it. We're going to make sure that it's approved so that you have what you need. Right. Okay, cool. They made it as easy as possible, right, in order to get unemployment. And even with the government, and the company I was working for making it as easy as possible, I did not receive. I filed. I did not receive a single check from unemployment until 4 months after I got furloughed. 4 months. And the funny thing about it, I was laughing with Gabriella about this. I got my first unemployment check at the same time I got my first new check from my new company. Because I found a new opportunity. I was like, oh, what the hell is it? I'm not unemployed anymore. I'm employed. And they're like, oh, yeah, we owe you money from the past, 4 months. Okay, I appreciate that, right? But again, it's having an understanding of these things and being intentional. And, right, you don't have to be – this is the thing that I love, and as you do this mind map, like, one of the things to keep yourself anchored to is you don't have to be – Warren Buffett, Bill Gates, Jeff Bezos in order to understand these things, or even start to make an investment in this area, right? It's about being intentional. It's about again, the compound effect. The reason why I was able to be in a position to take care of our family and float us for those 4 months because of these reserves is because I had already been practicing the system of investing and contributing to emergency savings and all that stuff for years, right? And so it was a compound effect. It was the compound effect of years of putting money aside and making sure that I'm paying myself first, and making sure that I'm living within a certain means, and making sure that only a certain percentage of my finances was going towards entertainment versus the essentials versus savings. It was only through those systems and the compound effect of that I was able to find myself in a position where I needed it. I was in a great position. I was definitely in a better position than most, because I had to have conversations with family members and friends who found themselves in similar situations, and unfortunately, they did not have that type of system in place to be able to take advantage of when they really needed it, right? And so, this is your wake up call. If last year didn't serve as a wake up call, this is your wake up call for our entrepreneurs, for our solopreneurs, for our leaders, for our professionals. Are you right now, today, in a position to take care of your family, right, from a finances perspective? Are you able to take care of your responsibilities if you got the call tomorrow that your job no longer existed? If you had to figure it out, right? If you had to figure it out, are you in the position? If the answer to that question is no, then you owe it to yourself to invest the time in mind mapping it out and really addressing these areas, some of the areas that we've called out as examples, and really starting the work of creating that system today, so that you can benefit from that compound effect, right? And then once you get the foundational stuff taken care of, right, your emergency savings and understanding your insurance, understanding your expenses and all that, then you can start working towards some of those bigger things of, savings and investment, right? How do I diversify my portfolio? Right, and that's just a fancy way of people saying, how do I have multiple ways that I can receive revenue, right? When they say diversify your portfolio, right? So, is it real estate, right? Is it getting into cryptocurrency, which I know people, just at the face of it, like, you hear it and you're like, oh man, that sounds like, some crazy Star Trek space age. Guys, I promise you, the information is out there. It's really, really simple. It's really, really simple to understand when you take the time to read it and digest it, right? The assets that exist out there and how you can start making, again, incremental investments to build towards that bigger investment, that bigger goal of financial freedom, right, through these compound effects.
One thing that stood out to me, it could be its own branch to start this whole process, or it could be its own mind map altogether. Because some of the concepts and words and vocabulary that you just use, people, maybe they're new to that. So the branch that you can start with, or again, this could be its own mind map, is financial education. And what are the things do I need to learn? So you mentioned that foundation to give me that solid foundation. A couple of books out there that, for somebody starting out: Rich Dad Poor Dad by Robert Kiyosaki. Yep, definitely got to read that one. Money Makeover by Dave Ramsey, and two complete opposite ends of the spectrum in kind of how they see debt and their, but get it, read it, digest it, and then you implement it and use what works for you. But those are just a couple of books that you can start with, and maybe again, it's you're interested in real estate, but I need to start learning more about real estate. And what does that mean? Is it flipping houses? Is it being a landlord and having rental properties? Is it going to be tax liens? There's so many different aspects of that, right? So that can be your start, is providing yourself that solid foundation, getting some of those basics out the way, and then start to implement, right? And start to break down. Because when it comes to Dave Ramsey, maybe you don't even have a budget. Like, you don't even know how to budget your money. So talking about investing the money and where should it go, if you don't even know where your money's going right now, it's going to be very, very difficult for you to decide where you should be putting it, because you don't know where your money is actually slipping through the cracks. So those can be definitely some starting points for you, is starting there. And as you learn and get those foundational principles underway, then you start moving to, as you mentioned, Devon, breaking out those other sub branches, and then start to put these things into action and put yourself and your family in a very safe and a healthier place for the short term and for the long term. And legacy and leadership, that is a huge part. While we talk about leading in the community and leading it in your workplace, or leading as a business owner behind the scenes, we talk a lot about the legacy that we're going to leave for our family with the things that we're doing when it comes to the podcast and our business, but from a financial perspective and generational wealth, and how do we build those things. So having that solid educational foundation, then starting to implement those things, again, is going to be a huge step for you. And it's that time of the season. If you haven't got your income tax, or you're getting your income tax, the stim checks are right on the way. What you gonna do with the stimmies? But it's an opportunity, right? To make decisions. What type of decision are you going to make? And maybe it's easy because the situation, you're like, I need to do these things with these finances that I'm going to get, especially if you've been in that situation, that maybe you've been furloughed or you don't have a job anymore. Completely understandable. But just think about some of these concepts that we've talked about, and even if it's a little bit, but how can I start taking some of that and learning more and investing it in the right way?
What I appreciate too is, like, you highlighting the fact that, maybe financial education is a place to start. Maybe it's education, in all of these areas, right? Education in terms of relationships, education in terms of health, and then education in terms of finances. You'll just be surprised that, like, yeah, facts. Rich Dad Poor Dad's a great
Right,
book, man. I
right,
recommend
right
seeing
next to
it.
me, life
Boom.
insurance, money and wealth. If you don't know, leaders are readers.
Exactly.
You got to read about it and get that education.
Well, and that's where I think there's a lot of power, right? Is in educating yourself and in the knowledge, because while 2020 is definitely a year of the pandemic, right? You've also heard people talk about it's been a bandemic, right? A bandemic in the sense that people have been able to navigate this financially trying time period and put themselves in a better position financially for their family, and they've only been able to do so because they have the foundational financial education so that they can understand how to take advantage of these things, right, and navigate it effectively. I mean, for example, just like a real quick example of that for our entrepreneurs, our solopreneurs out there. How many of you were able to effectively navigate or understand how to take advantage of the PPP loans that existed out there? I mean, for the first time in a long time, the government, they were essentially loaning out money to small businesses and entrepreneurs at close to 0% interest rate, right? And also the loan being forgivable. Now, if you don't have an understanding of just kind of financial education and how you can take advantage of those things, how to navigate the process of getting those loans forgiven, right, while still being able to leverage them in order to fund your business, in order to fund your PPE, in order to fund maybe keeping people employed, or maybe you were a service worker or hospitality worker and you got your wages cut, and as well, like, and so you act as a contract employee, right? You're a 1099, so you, in your mind, you're essentially your own business, right? How you can take advantage of the PPP loans that existed, right? Then you may have found yourself not being able to take care of your financial responsibilities, and again, being at the mercy of again, legislators and just these entities out there, and not being in the driver's seat yourself, right? And so, again, being able to have that education really allows you to operate from a place of being intentional and informed, right? And then being able to make some solid decisions. Like I mentioned, again, I shared in complete transparency. It was definitely 2020 was a trying time for us in the sense that obviously it was unexpected, but I'm thankful for the fact that I've been intentional about creating these systems, and these are things that were ingrained in me from my father, because again, we've had plenty of conversations about generational wealth, and it's been ingrained in me by my friends and people that we have similar worldviews, and so we have conversations off mic about financial independence and financial wellness. I mean, I'm having conversation from from you, Jimmy, to Rico, to my barber, to my father, like all of these different individuals that are important people in my life, right? We have these type of discussions, right? And so I'm fortunate that because of that influence, and because of the commitment to building a system that has worked for me, I was able to navigate being furloughed, being without a job, to put our family in a better financial position. And looking back on it, like it just hit me earlier today, but to look back on it in hindsight, and understand, realize that we went from being with a company for 12, 13 years to being furloughed, to having to tap my emergency funds and savings to float us, to being in a better position financially, to entering the waters as a landlord, right, and now having a rental property, to starting a business with you this year, and just kind of seeing all of those things come to fruition, and how we were able to navigate that, how I was able to navigate that with my family. Like, I know it's because of those systems. And so when we talk to you, legacy leaders, we're sharing from a place of experience, and experience, and just genuine, sincere advice, because we know what it's like to sit on the other end of that conversation and have to carry the weight of those decisions. And if there's anything that we can do in order to continue to help put you in a position so that you can operate at the peak you in this space, like, we're going to pass that information on. That's what it's about. That's how you create a legacy for generations to come. It's by educating as many people as possible so that they can do the same.
Amen. Amen. That's it. We need some more applause. That was good. I do wanna apologize to our listeners out there because I held up two books, excited in the moment because not even thinking that we were gonna. I mean, we knew what we were gonna talk about, but not necessarily think we were gonna talk about Robert Kiyosaki and Rich Dad Poor Dad. And literally, the book was right next to me, so I grabbed it. But Rich Dad Poor Dad, I'll mention it again. The other book I showed is Money, Wealth, Life Insurance: How the Wealthy Use Life Insurance as a Tax-Free Personal Bank to Supercharge Their Savings. I also mentioned Money Makeover. As well. So we'll actually put links, to those books. Those are things that you're interested. Definitely encourage you to do so, to pick those up. All of the Rich Dad Poor Dad, Money Makeover by, I said his name earlier. Oh my gosh, I hate that.
Oh,
But they all
Dave
have
Ramsey.
different books. Thank you, Dave Ramsey. They all have different books and systems that it also helps you to teach your children, right? Because that is so important. As an adult, get the financial education, but how do I teach my children as well? So again, we'll put the links there. Definitely take a look at it. Good foundational information for you.
Yeah. I love real quick that you mentioned teaching your children too, because that was probably the most rewarding. I guess, yeah, I can say rewarding. The most rewarding part of the experience that I had last year, or what fed me the most through that process was, like, I got an opportunity, especially my oldest Gio, because obviously he's at that age where he's super observant and curious, and he's just like a sponge, right? And so he got to have a front row seat to seeing me navigate that and navigate that type of adversity and navigate, having to make decisions, right? And how we were able to reap the benefits of, again, that discipline and that education and having those systems in place. And to this day, there's things that he says that, like, he really absorbed that lesson, in terms of navigating that and the importance of that saving and the importance of ensuring that financially, right, you have a really strong foundation and strong financial education, right? Like, he learned something from those experiences. So to your point, being able to teach your children, like, that's the next step in terms of truly creating generational wealth. Because you've heard me say it before, Jimmy, and for our legacy leaders, I'll share with you, just, it's my personal belief that having had the opportunity to be around a lot of very financially independent and wealthy individuals growing up, having the experience that I had, in terms of my education, the thing that I really took away from that experience was that those who are financially adept and those who are financially independent, what they pass on to their children is not actual wealth in the sense of dollars. Yeah, they have trust funds and all that other good stuff, right? I mean, if you have the ability to do that, you absolutely should do that. But what they really pass down to their kids is, they don't pass down the $1,000,000. They pass down the knowledge of how to make $1,000,000, right? Because when you know how to create wealth, when you know how to create financial independence, it doesn't matter what situation you're in, right? You can navigate those things effectively, right? Now, obviously, if you have a Kickstarter and stuff like that, in terms of a little nest egg to get people going and hit the ground running, then yeah, absolutely, that does put them in a better position. But even absent of that, just having the knowledge of how to navigate these spaces and how to look at debt differently and how to exercise financial discipline and budget effectively, and then how to get your money out of savings and really into investing in different assets and what that means for you and how you can make your money go to work for you. Like, it's all of those things that really lead to creating generational wealth.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So legacy leaders, just be reminded that using mind maps in all areas of your personal life, it will help to keep you on track and make life more comfortable as you have a clear path to follow. And that's our desire for you. That's what we're trying to help you with, is to create a clearer path for you in your health, in your relationships and your finances and in your life overall. So we hope again that this was of benefit to you. I know there was a ton of golden nuggets. So if you hear a lot of coin droppings in this one, again, it's because there's a lot of golden nuggets that we shared. But it's one thing to absorb and digest the information, but I challenge you to take action. We've provided books. There's links in the show notes where you can get those specific books. Maybe you already have some of this information. Take it to the next level. Start to put these things in place and start the process of your health, your relationships, and your finances, and nurturing those things, investing in those things, and making the best out of them. So again, we appreciate you as always riding with us. Continue to look out for the next episode, which is going to be our next installment of the NBA series, Mentored by Adversity. Again, you're not going to want to miss that. We're continuing the theme of mind mapping, so it's going to be a special opportunity for you to learn more from somebody else and to give us an opportunity to cap the month of March off and just really tie everything up with a nice bow on this mind mapping, which leads us to our mind mapping challenge. We've been talking about investing. So this is an opportunity for you to invest in yourself, invest some time, spend 14 days with us, spend 14 days with yourself. It's putting in the work and putting in the time, going through these mind maps in more detail will help you through the activities. We're going to have a special closed group for the individuals that decide to invest in this opportunity. It's going to be a small investment, but an investment nonetheless to take advantage of this 14-day mind map. So again, check the show notes. There'll be information in there for you as well. Reach out to us, contact us if you want to leave comments and leave us a review. We definitely appreciate that. Leave comments in the YouTube channel if you're one of our watchers as well. Again, we read them, we engage, we love to hear from you. You never know, your comment may also spark and inspire the next topic in one of our next episodes. So be a part of the process. Meet us in the Legacy Leader community on Facebook. We'd love for you to meet us there. Many more engagements and conversations going on there. Much more resources that we have available for you every Wednesday. Still going live, cold brew and convos with your L3G coaches. You can always catch the replay on the YouTube, but if you're there live, we do Q&As. Again, you can engage and participate in the conversation with us. We'd love to have you there. Follow us on Instagram as well at Legacy Leadership. You can follow Devon at Leadership Docent. Follow myself at Coach_Jimmie G Jr. Always appreciate the love and the follow. And of course, Legacy in Leadership Podcast, LinkedIn, Facebook, and of course on our YouTube channel that continues to sprout and grow as we nurture the community with the hotness that is the Legacy in Leadership Podcast. So we thank you for your time. We thank you for having us. We thank you for investing your time in this podcast, in this listening, in this edutainment that we provide you. Take action, put it to work, invest in your relationships, invest in your health, invest in your finances, and you're a much happier and joyful life. So until next time, Legacy Leaders, we thank you very much. God bless y'all.
Encouraged.
Rage on that beat, going crazy.
You have just listened to the Legacy and Leadership Podcast, hosted by Jimmie Gonzalez and Devon Watts. Thank you, and we hope that you live, lead, and leave a legacy worth remembering. Until next time.